I'm a sibling. I am a sibling. I had two younger brothers. My youngest brother, Nick, was diagnosed with a developmental disability when he was 6 months old, and I was 4. And so I can't remember when I started being a caregiver, very young. My brother Jim, in the middle of us, was in an accident in his 30s and had an acquired disability that impacted his ability to work and to get through his days. I have also recently been a full-time family caregiver, unpaid. Uh, so I truly appreciate the role of the family, but also the need to take a break. So let's talk about respite. I know some of you shared that you are the person at the county board that helps authorize or link families to respite. But I want to talk about respite, what it is, not that it is just a service, and why it is so important for caregivers to take a break from caregiving and how they can problem solve possibilities. So I will introduce you to some of the tools from Charting the Life Course that are useful for planning respite that I myself have used, and also identify how families and professionals can use these tools. You have 4 handouts. You should have gotten the PowerPoint, the respite portfolio. If you know anything about Charting the Life Course, there is a planning portfolio. There are many, many different portfolios, but I'm really going to go through the respite portfolio. I also included the respite guide. It's a booklet. You can look at it, see the research that's been done nationally to develop the respite portfolio, and also the respite starter star. So as many of you know, in Ohio, what we want to do is build a common vocabulary that's understood by people receiving supports, families, and professionals across service systems, so that when people talk about a respite or a portfolio or life domains or the integrated support star, we all know what people are talking about. And so therefore, we're not, what's the word? Making things so confusing and agency specific for families as they navigate supports for their family. Our core belief, what drives our work, is that we want all people and their families have the right to live, love, work, play, learn, and pursue their life aspirations in their community. For those of you that are veterans, either as family members or as professionals, this is almost language verbatim out of the Rehab Act of 1974. So a federal law that's 50 years old. I also want to just highlight that we all have to be person-centered. And that's in Medicaid rule, that's or guidance, that's in Ohio rule. It's been in Ohio rule for over 20 years. And it is national practice that we have to be person-centered. Recently, I have people define person-centered as the person is in the center. And that's not what person-centered means. My brother was born 66 years ago. And from the time he was 6 months old until when he passed, he had plans. We did not have public services because there weren't any, but he had plans and they were about him. They were not about me or about our family. So he was in the center. But the plan was about his deficits and what he needed to improve, and a medical model, and focused on disability. In person-centered thinking and person-centered planning, what we want is that people have better lives, not just better paper. So if you're saying you're person-centered, these are the outcomes: better lives, people have lives they value, People have positive control over their lives, and that means they have that civil right of self-determination or control over decisions affecting their lives. And people are valued in their community, so they're seen as human beings and not as people with disabilities. We know that everybody exists within the context of family, whether it's biological or chosen, and it is not dependent on where someone lives, if they live close to a family member, or if they attend the meetings. That does not guarantee that people care about their loved one, or not attending does not mean they don't love their loved one. In Charting the Life course, we talk about caring about, and that's represented by a heart. So those emotional supports and caring for the physical supports. As we talk about respite, we also recognize that everyone in the family reciprocates caring about and caring for. So the person with a disability cares about people in their family, they care for people in their family, as well as people in the family care about them and care for them. There is reciprocity. We know that the focus in Charting the Life course and person-centered is not just on the person with a disability, but also on the family. It's a holistic approach. And why do we look at the family? Because in Ohio, the most recent statistics that I could access tell us that 68% of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities live with family. 17% live alone or with one other person, and 15% live in supervised residential settings. So intermediate care facilities, group homes where there is staff 24/7. So if you look at these statistics, 85% of people do not live in supervised residential settings. So where are they getting their supports from? And the answer is probably family. So Charting the Life course worked with ARCH, which is Access to Respite Care and Help. It is a national network and resource center for respite. The website is on the slide. They have a lot of tools, a lot of information about respite, and respite being a break from caregiving. So not just with people with developmental disabilities, but aging, people who are aging and family is taking care of them. I would guess that almost everyone on this call is a caregiver. I just did a series with people in New York that got a grant to provide respite to families across the lifespan. And a lot of the staff were like, well, I don't have a loved one with a disability. And I said, but I bet you're a caregiver and I bet you need a break. And all of a sudden, all these people were like, I have 2 children under 3. I have 4 children. I'm expecting my second child. And I'm like, caregiving is not just about supporting people with disabilities. So think about your role. What is your role with caregiving? And what would a good break look like? So in Charting the Life course, we want to have different conversations about respite. It's not just a service, but it's a break from caregiving. And you can take that break without getting respite services. We changed the conversation to look at what is valued respite for the caregiver and what is valued respite for the care recipient. Because let's be honest, the people that we provide care to probably want a break from us too. It's not just that we need the break as the caregiver, but they need a break too. It's like, oh my gosh. And I think of recently when I was a full-time caregiver, it wasn't just good for me to have a break from my partner, but for him to have a break from me. I just talked to a friend of mine this week whose wife is going blind. And he said to me, I know she's going blind, but every so often I'll say to her, what do you mean you can't see it? It's right in front of you. And he goes, Barb, I get mad at her. And they've been married for over 50 years. And he goes, I can't believe I get mad at her. And I said, that's normal, but you need a break. You're going to get mad. We get frustrated. We want to look at different supports for caregiving, not just the respite service, but also the points of the integrated support star. What personal strengths do people have? Both the caregiver and the care recipient. What are is there anybody they can count on? What technology can help them take support break? I was so excited that I could take a break and my partner knew how to use a cell phone and could call me and did call me if I wasn't there. But at least I knew that he could use the cell phone, answer the cell phone, and that was a way for us to keep in touch. And then what's out in the community that might provide respite? And then eligibility specific supports. So when we look at respites, we need to look at the benefits for the family. For some people, taking a break can also, when you come back, the time is of more quality because you have gotten that break. You've gotten away from maybe your frustrations, maybe your anger. But also you might be able to spend time with other family members. So as a sibling, one of the things that I hear from other adults that are siblings is, my parents couldn't go to my concerts. My parents didn't even go to my high school graduation. And sadly, some siblings have even shared, both of my parents couldn't even go to my wedding because they couldn't leave my sibling with somebody. Also, when you have a break, I knew when I had a break, when I came back and had time with my partner, with George, it was like, okay, I'm relaxed. I've gotten a break. I got to take care of myself. Now I can really focus again on being a partner, being a caregiver. And also, taking a break supports people to do what maybe they are missing in their life. One mother told me, all I want to do is be able to take a bath in my own bathroom and not worry about what's going on outside that door. I just want peace and quiet. Another mother said, I just want to sleep uninterrupted. I just want a night of sleep. And her dream respite was to check into a hotel so she could sleep and get a full night's rest. So for the caregiver, it gives you time to go do those things that we typically do, running errands, sleeping, taking a bath, making your own medical appointments. When I was a full-time caregiver, I put off 3 optional surgeries. They were not life-threatening. They were not optional. I needed to have them, but they were not life-threatening because I couldn't figure out how to get support as I was recuperating. But it also gives you time to spend with other family members and maybe to do things you enjoy. Like for me, just going out to dinner with a friend or just sitting and visiting with another family, reading, anything. For me, it also was going to the gym. And for it just enhances your own physical and mental health. And you get this sense of renewal and relief if you take a break, like, okay, I can deal with this now. For the care recipient, what we emphasize is, what would good respite look like for them? What would they like to do so that the respite provider is not just sitting on the couch watching TV with them, but, do they want to do something? And can the respite provider do that? I shared this information with respite providers who provide therapeutic respite for youth in multi-systems. And the respite providers were like, oh my gosh, I would rather do something meaningful with the youth that they want to do versus just sitting there and spending time on the couch with them, watching TV or playing a video game. But what do they want to do? Do they have an interest? Can we go out and do something? But also, just as the caregiver needs a break so that they can feel renewed, so does the care recipient. You know, they might get tired of having us around all the time. And, you know, as we love our family members, but, you know, they may perceive our support as nagging. And so sometimes having that break is very, very positive. So again, having that break may enhance the relationship because everyone is not as stressed. It could enhance self-esteem, like, oh, I can do things without my family member around or with this respite provider. And also it may support their physical and mental health. So we want everyone to have a good life. We want everyone to be included in their community. And we want families to be supported and their strengths recognized so that they can turn around and support their loved ones. And for both parties, the caregiver and the care recipient, that may mean a break from each other. So here is the respite portfolio. We know we sent this to you, but if you want to find it later, you can find it on lifecoursetools.com. It is a typable PDF, so you can use it to fill out, or you can just use the principles of it. And it's under library and then under life domains. So the front, the one pager, is a little different than all the other one pagers because now it's related to respite. And the first section is, what does caregiving look like? What is going on in my life as a caregiver? What are my concerns and stressors? And what is the impact on the caregiver and the care recipient? So if you are comfortable, what does caregiving look like? For my brother, Nick needed total care. So it was total care. And even during the night, because he had apnea. And so we were, you know, we had to be very aware of if he stopped breathing or if he needed help during the night. With my partner, caregiving was, you know, making sure they took their meds, he ate, he did some self-care things, he was safe in the house. So what does caregiving look like? If you're comfortable typing in chat. Is it giving a lot of directions? Is it having to be there? Is it that, you know, can you take a little break? And, you know, let's remember that school and day program provides respite. We get some time away from our loved one. We get a break. All right, I'll go to the next section. The second section, that orange heading, is how would taking short breaks help? For me, taking a short break, whether it was going to the gym, first of all, it gave me an outlet. You know, exercise is really positive and it's helpful. And it just let me focus. I would listen to a book while I was working out. So I was able to read, I was able to exert physical energy and burn off some of that stress. And also just sitting with my friend who we call each other sisters, just having conversation that was not related to caregiving. So how would taking short breaks help? If anyone is comfortable typing in chat, what would be the impact on you as the caregiver? What would be the impact on the person, on your loved one? Ah, somebody type, thank you. Yes, a mental refresh. Oh my gosh, that's a great way to put it. Chance to take care of my own needs. Exactly. Exactly. I had to schedule my dental and medical appointments around caregiving, and so I was like, ay, yeah, 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 yeah. More energy, making sure my daughter's on track. Yes, yes, yes. Doing, absolutely. Doing things till she looks good and feels good. Emotional regulation, absolutely. Yes, a break can bring you closer, more patience, time for self. Exactly. It's amazing what a short break, going to the gym for 40 minutes and the gym is 5 minutes away. So being away for an hour just gave me such a sense of relief. And I didn't have to think. I mean, I had my cell phone with me. He called me while I was at the gym, but still I could say, I'm at the gym. I'll be home in 30 minutes or whatever. A refresher. Thank you, everybody, for typing in chat. Thank you so much and for thinking about that. So why is this the frame? We want people to see respite as a positive thing. A lot of families I worked with would say, Barb, this is my job. God put me on this earth to take care of my son or daughter. And I'd be like, yes, but you need to take care of yourself also. So the third section on the front page is what would you do if you had a short break? And you may think this, why would we even ask this? But I have had several parents tell me, I finally got an independent provider. I trained them. I felt comfortable. And the first day that they could be there without my supporting them, I had no idea what to do. And I sat on the couch and I said, oh my gosh, you had a break. And they go, I never even thought about what would I do. So what would you do if you had a short break? I had one father tell me, my wife and I cannot leave our teenage son alone. He has total care needs. And he said, I would love to take my wife out to dinner and the two of us just be able to sit in a restaurant and have dinner. And I'll talk more about when we problem solve that. So who would who would I spend time with? Maybe another family member, maybe reconnecting, maybe having coffee with a friend that you have not been able to spend time with. And post-COVID, us being home, a lot of people have said, I want to reconnect with my friends and my relatives that I haven't seen for a while. And then what needs to be in place so I'm comfortable? So for me, I looked at respite in the aging system and that my partner would be eligible for, and so would I. And the way I had to schedule it, the way I had to set it up was not going to help me. And so what I looked at was what would a good respite provider look like? And it was somebody who would not be bossy because all they had to do was boss him once and that would be it. I would lose my support. But someone who knew how to interact in a very supportive way without being bossy. And in fact, the woman that I had would say, what if he didn't take his pills? I said, don't even go there. I'll take care of that. I just want you to make sure he has dinner, heated up, and you can go home. She lived very close, like 2 doors away. And I said, that's all. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to check that he's done anything or he's completed anything. I'm looking at your Okay. Yes. 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 Absolutely. Sleep is sometimes it's hard to figure out whether to sleep or not. Yes. Or start looking at something else. Absolutely. Thank you for those comments. So when we look at the trajectory for exploring respite, it's different than other trajectories because respite is different. So we want to look at not only what's a good life and what do we want to avoid or what we don't want, which is typical on a trajectory. Both are just as important, knowing what we want and what we don't want. But we want to look at what's a good life for the care recipient, for the caregiver, and for good respite. So we can see what needs to be in place so that it is good respite for both parties. So asking the care recipient, if I'm not there, what would be good respite? Sorry about that, folks. I did not turn on my phone. I apologize. But what would be good respite from their perspective? What do they want to do? What type of person do they want? You know, sometimes people have said, I want a female, I want a male, I want to be able to go out of the house for the care recipient, and then helping identify what's a good respite. So I know those of you that are helping people find respite providers are looking for someone. And this is a little deeper, someone who can do what? Maybe it's qualities, you know, for me, like I said, somebody who would come in and not be bossy and not ask questions like, did you take your medication? Did you eat your lunch? Did you? Because that would be power over, and that would be the end of my respite because that would not work. So what would be good respite for the caregiver, the care recipient, and then good respite for both? Just as important, what we don't want. So what we don't want for the care recipient, somebody to boss them around, somebody to be monitoring them, somebody to, for me, somebody to act like they were in control. What I didn't want for the caregiver was for the person to come in. I wanted them to be trustworthy to come into the home, because I wasn't sure that if something bad happened, that George would be able to convey it. So I didn't want someone who would be nosy. I didn't want someone who would be going through things that they didn't have any responsibility for. And then good respite, just somebody that would be, you know, I knew it was good respite for George because he would call me and say, oh, she just left. She is such a nice person. You know, we sat and we talked for a little bit, and she watched the baseball game with me, and she gave me my bowl of ice cream, and I was like, it is good respite. Not good respite would have been directing, bossing. And then whenever we do a trajectory for planning, we always look at what have we tried in the past. So have you tried respite in the past? What worked? Was it somebody, and think about age, think about gender, think about relationships. You know, did you only depend on family? Was respite better when it was a family member? Was gender a determining factor? And then what happened in the past that wasn't so good? Did you try respite and maybe it didn't work out? And why didn't it work out? So you're doing some reflection. You know, let's learn from our past. And then what would it take to have good respite? So these are like the next steps. Finding someone who, is female, is in their 20s or 30s, because that's who the person enjoys being around. Or for some of these therapeutic respite providers, they were very interested in finding out what the youth wanted to do, what they like to do, and how they could provide those opportunities. So, if somebody wanted to play basketball, having a respite caregiver that could take them to the school or to the park and shoot baskets, or maybe take them to a basketball game, maybe at the high school or whatever. And then what don't you want? Because it would not be helpful and it would be hard to take a break. So I knew respite worked because the person that I hired did not just talk to me, but talk to George and asked him what he wanted, did not just ask me. All I asked from her is just tell me how things are going. And she would text me, all good. And that was good enough for me because I could trust her. So now we've identified why respite is so important, what good respite would look like for the care recipient as well as the caregiver. And now we're going to brainstorm. So how do we move forward? How do we get this respite? And in charting the life course, when we want to brainstorm options or possibilities, we use the integrated support star. So in the middle, we would put good respite. And then we would brainstorm by going through the 5 areas of the integrated support star. So here's just a reference to what is considered under each of the 5 areas. It is color-coded to the integrated support star in the center. And 5 points of a star, 5 areas of integrated supports. So let's talk about personal strengths and assets. So what can the person do, or what assets does the family have? What skills do they have? So at one point I was supporting my mother, who was living with me, and my partner, who both had strokes within 2 months of each other. Their personal strengths at the beginning was that they both could use a cell phone. I pre-programmed my mother's because she could not dial. George's was also pre-programmed because that's the way he did it, but they could use the cell phone. They both had emergency alerts, but that would be technology. They both could read. So that was a personal strength because I could leave them messages. I used a calendar with each of them, and I could write, Barb is going to the gym, we'll be back at whatever. Or George liked to watch the baseball games, the Indians, the Guardians. And so on the calendar, I would write when the baseball game was on, if I wasn't going to be home, and even if I was, and the channels so that he could watch the baseball game. They both could no longer cook, but they could initially reheat. Oh my goodness, Carrie. Thank you for sharing that, Carrie. I just read it. But they both could reheat meals that I prepared and put in small crocks that had a handle that were easy to carry and that they could put in their walker baskets or on the table that they had on their walkers. So they had a lot of strengths and assets. They both used pill minders. They both could take their pills independently. They both could take care of themselves too. They could dress themselves, they could bathe, all that other good stuff. So initially, these personal strengths made it easier for me to take a break. Who can help you? And think about specific people. Who in your family? Are there friends that can help you? Are there acquaintances? I did contact the aging system, and like I said, it would not work for me the way they had respite set up. And so I reached out to a friend that I trusted, because I thought if I needed if I needed help, me, not just respite, but if I needed help, who do I know that I would want to help me, that I would trust? And I came up with this one friend's name. I knew she could not help me with respite because she had retired to support her grandson, who had recently been diagnosed on the spectrum, and to support her daughter and son-in-law. But I contacted her and said, this is what I need. I don't need much. I just need, if I'm out of town training, can somebody check on them at dinner time, or if they're able to, maybe twice a day? Can they make sure they had their meal? And can they just tell me how things are going? And she goes, I would do it. And I said, no, 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 I know you can't. And she goes, I know who could. She said, you know her. She gave me a name. I said, I don't know who that is. She said, that's your neighbor who has a white dog. I said, oh my gosh, I do know her. And she said, can I share with her what's going on? Within minutes, I had this woman's phone number and a text from my friend that said, she's willing to help you. She's expecting a phone call. And that's who I used. Now, as a family member, it's hard to ask for help. But I realized that I had explored options, and I did not have something that would work. And so I reached out to a friend, and she was able to help me. Technology. I told you, they both read, they both use cell phones. I could do whiteboards. Don't think of high tech, think of low tech. So I used whiteboards with both of them because I could write stuff down. I had a calendar for each of them. I had a pill minder for each of them. What other technology did I use? Oh, they both had emergency alert systems. They didn't like them, so they didn't use them really well, but they had them. So, what can I say? I bought alarm clocks. I bought clocks that are digital displays. They were $60 on Amazon. And I could set it to remind them to eat and remind them to take their pills. And it would go off and the screen would say, time for lunch, take medication. And it was amazing because they would, oh, it's time to take my medication. And it was touch screen. So all they had to do was touch it to stop the alarm. Community resources. There are senior programs. There are daycare centers. There are activities in the community. All sorts of resources. And then eligibility specific, if people are eligible for DD services, they might be eligible to get a provider to come in and provide home and community-based services, or they might be able to get respite through the aging system or through the DD system. So what's available? There also might be transportation, so that if they do want to go shopping at the grocery store, but maybe you can't drive them when they want to go, you can get your local transportation that will do specialized door-to-door transportation. This is the Respite Starter Star. So if you're thinking, well, geez, I wouldn't even know where to start. There are several starter stars on lifecoursetools.com. There's one for each of the 6 life domains. There's one for respite, and there's one for supported decision-making. But it tells you things to think about. So I told you about this father who said, all I want to do is be able to take my wife out to dinner, and the two of us just have maybe an hour that we can sit in a restaurant and have a meal together, and just the two of us. And Of course, when he said this, I was like, where does he live? I'll go watch their son. But their son was a teenager. They had never been able to have a meal together because one of them always had to be with their son. And so as we started going around the star, I said, do you know anybody who could give you a break? I said, maybe you can reciprocate with another family. Maybe they can come to your house and give you 2 hours to go out to dinner, and maybe you can do something for their family. Maybe you can take their son or daughter to an activity, or maybe you can go to their house and one of you can go and give them a break so they can go out to dinner. And do you know anybody in your church community? And he was involved in a church community that had oh my gosh, what's it called? They had supports for families that had loved ones with disabilities. They had a disability ministry. That was the word I was trying to think of. And all of a sudden he looks at me and he goes, oh my gosh, I never thought to ask another family. And he goes, I know exactly the family that I'm thinking of. He goes, that's a good idea. I'm going to reach out to them and see if they would come to my house. We would make sure my son is eaten and, but just so they can be there in case something happens. They would have our cell phone numbers. We'll make sure he's taking his medication and he's comfortable in his routine. And I don't know how it ended, but he was so positive that he would be able to barter, almost barter with someone. I'll do this, you do that. And so he said, I just never thought of that. I always thought it had to be a service and a paid provider and all this other stuff. So helping people think, what are the possibilities? A lot of times it could be a relative, a cousin, an aunt, an uncle. One father, same thing. I wish we could just go out to dinner. And he goes, usually my parents or my wife's parents would come over, but they're getting older and I don't want to ask them to have to lift my son or reposition my son because their son needed a lot of physical care. And I said, do you know anybody else? Are there younger people that you know or can you go when maybe your son doesn't need that type of physical care? And so just helping people think, what are the possibilities? So let me ask you before I wrap up, do you have any ideas of how you might use any of these resources? And can you type it in chat? Because it's not just sharing different resources, but do you see a possibility of how this might help you in your family or in your role of supporting other families? And can you type in chat? There's 32 of you. Yeah, so I don't want to, or you can open mic and just call my name so you want to share. But I would love to hear how you think you might be able to use this information, personally or professionally. You don't have to give me details, but if you say, I never thought about what respite would look like, what I would do, and now I'm thinking I need to consider that, or anything else.
So Barb,
Yes.
hi, it's Tina Wallace from Columbus City Schools. And I just wanted to tell you one thing I do. My daughter is 28 and my sister is actually my respite person. And what we did was we went through Franklin County Board of DD, and then they had her hooked up with a service like ZNC services, but you can go through the service in your county. And what they did is after she had to pay some to start out, and then they did all kinds of tests, and then they pay her through the county. So that's like one of her waivers, and they pay her through the county. And then plus she gets her stuff, her respite part through Medicaid, but she also gets it through the county too. So that's one thing we did. And I mean, even just because my daughter I mean, she's very well, high functioning, but she's very, needs support all the time of being somewhere, somebody being there. So
Yeah.
that was huge for us. So I just wanted to, bring that up to see if that would work for someone else.
Oh, Tina, thank you so much for sharing. I love, your sister, it sounds like she became an independent, or she became a provider and was hired by an agency
Yep.
and went through the training. But asking a family member who maybe has a relationship, or maybe with your loved one, or maybe your loved one enjoys being with that person, it's beneficial to both sides. Your sister is getting paid, and your daughter is with somebody she enjoys being with, and they can hang out and do stuff together. And it's not just, we're going to sit here and watch TV. I love it. Love it. Thank you, Tina. Oh, you put your camera on. Thank you, Tina. Anybody else? As an SSA, I look forward to using the tool with families who are unfamiliar and have a hard time understanding what their options are. Yes, yes, yes. Lindsay said, I need respite. Have you approached anyone? Love the idea. Valerie, like the idea of connecting a family with another family. Don't know, hating to do for a family member while lives out of the area and whose roommate needs support. Okay. Hadn't considered non-paid or non-waiver. I'm working with a family that does not have active funding sources. This will be a great approach. Marilyn, I have to Valerie, I see. Autocorrect. I will, in full disclosure, transparency, for me, my neighbor, my friend, she became my angel, did not want to get paid and said, I will help you. And I private paid. I would give her gifts, and I would give her gift cards, and I would give her cash, because for me, it met my need. And one of my personal strengths was that I was able to give her money. And initially, respite was very simple. Can you come in the house and just make sure they ate dinner? And she would be in the house for maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes. And then she would be like, oh, I decided to watch part of the baseball game with George, and I'd be texting her, you can go home, you have a family. So it was a very different relationship. Okay. And it was private pay because it worked for me. So there's lots of possibilities. I love that you're thinking though, that, uh, possibilities, trading, asking your church community. Maybe, there may be people in the church community who are family members, who are professionals. One family told me that they actually went to the local university and talked to the special ed professors and actually wrote a one-page person-centered description for their daughter. Yes, it was their daughter. And asked the professors if they would share it with their class, or if they could talk to the class about the perspective of a family. And they got their respite providers from the local college, who were special ed majors or therapy majors, OT, PT, speech. And so thinking about going to the local college, going to your church or your faith-based community. Let me see, somebody typed something. Oh, okay, Erica, I see. You're posting upcoming possibilities, trainings. Let me see if anybody wrote anything. Okay. So lots of possibilities. I hadn't even thought about going to the local universities. But they said, and they made a video of their daughter, so that they could show the video and people could see who their daughter was, and got teenagers, young adults, in their early 20s, teenagers to early 20s, special ed majors. What a great opportunity for them to have some experience that they can then talk about as they went for jobs. So thank you for sharing, everybody. I really appreciate it. But to wrap up, benefits of taking short breaks for the family unit, for the caregiver, and the care recipient. Everybody just feels renewed, refreshed. For the family, it could mean spending more time together. Like I said, a lot of siblings have concerns about their family could not go to their events. Improved quality, improved relationship with the recipient. If you can get away and recognize, as my friend did, that he was getting angry with his wife, and he goes, I know she's going blind, but I'd say to her, why can't you? It's right in front of you. Can't you see it? And he goes, and then I catch myself. And him being able to take a break when he goes back home, then he's got some refreshing. We were actually at a group activity that we both enjoy. And so I hope when he went home, he felt a little better, because he had kind of shared something that maybe he doesn't feel comfortable sharing with lots of people. But the caregiver has time to do those things that they want to do. Oh, thank you, Valerie. Thank you so much. But also for the care recipient, maybe they can do something they want to do that the parent maybe doesn't have an interest in. And also maybe they can see that, hey, I am capable of doing some things on my own or with somebody other than my parents. So just something to remember. It's not just a service, but it's actually taking a break. We have lots of presentations. We hope you sign up for frnohio.org. And Erica has put some upcoming events. And the last thing that we will ask you as you leave the webinar, as you leave this Zoom session, a survey will pop up. And that, again, is part of our grant requirement to get feedback. So you can either do the QR code, or when you leave, it will pop up and say, thank you for attending. Please complete the survey. So thank you so much. And Erica has put the QR code in chat. And thank you, Debbie. Things you never really thought of. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad to hear that. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great rest of your day. And good luck as you support others to take that meaningful, needed break from caregiving. If anyone has questions, I'll stay on for another minute or so. Oh, thank you, Erin. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you, Tiffany. So you can either do the QR code, or when you leave, the survey will pop up. You are all welcome. Thank you for participating. Thank you for sharing in chat with me. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Penny.